Hello, welcome to the final project of graphics and rendering programming. So let me showcase my scene over here, and as we can see that it was running without any errors or exceptions. Now this is the scene. So there is a volcanic eruption that has happened and a crater has been formed. So two spacecrafts are there to investigate what has happened, and there is a mystical egg at the center, which we can see over here. And these are three observer objects dropped by the investigating agency, two cubes and one pyramid, which are circling this sphere over here. And also because of this ash, so there is a fog effect happening in the area, as we can see over here, and it is a night sky. So this is my skybox. Now, sorry for the interruption. Now these two spacecrafts are dropping 2 point lights, as we can see, which are rotating from beneath them along with them. And also there is a point light that is dropping on the egg, which we can see over here. It's ambient and specular effect. Also from my specter, from my triangle, there is a spotlight, greenish spotlight that is going through this way, which is ending over here. This is the spotlight that is dropping. Also, one more thing to notice is that this cube is using a same texture on all its faces, whereas this cube, just to show different effect, I am using a dice texture, so it has different numbers on each side. And also my pyramid is using same texture. Another thing to notice is that this object is interacting with light. Texture is already there, and this point light, when it comes to this, so it gets illuminated. So all my objects are interacting with the texture as well as light at the same time. So this is a scene, an investigation of a volcanic eruption with mystical items. So let's just keep this running and I'll show you the code for this. So I have graphic objects dealing with my models. So for the pre-made models, I'm using the pyramid and the cubes over here, which I showed you, and graphics object takes care of the texture and rendering. Same way for my the models that I have loaded, that spacecraft, so model craft that is rotating. Then there is a skybox and the terrain, the volcanic terrain that I showed you. Then I set up the word matrices for each of these. Then I set my spotlight, because there is only one spotlight going from my pyramid, and 3 point lights that I showed you, one from the egg and two from the spacecrafts. Then in draw scene, I just load up the word and the material for each of the graphics object and throw render on them, and through this simple code everything gets rendered onto the screen, which is happening over here. Now few things to notice over here is that I'm using the texture light for my objects. So my objects have multiple meshes, so for each of the meshes the light gets calculated, and the texture is getting set for each of the meshes. So this is the texture that is getting loaded from the file over here. So like for the spacecraft, I'm using two textures. One is the craft text and the color texture. So the same single function, it associates the mesh number to the appropriate texture that gets loaded from the file. Then I set up the world and material matrices, and this gets set up for each of the meshes, and render gets called on to the object. Now multiple shaders are getting used over here. I'm using texture light to calculate the light values, as we can see over here. Then One more thing to notice over here is that along with the light, I calculate the fog data, which was getting rendered on the screen, and then my calculation of the values, light values. So like if I show you the calculation for this light over here, so directional light is only one which was illuminating the screen. Yeah, apart from those two lights, I also have a directional light, so that's why the screen was a bit illuminated. If I remove the light, it will be fully dark, or I can set it to extremely bright also. Now I calculate the point light because there are 3 point lights rotating on the screen, and then I calculate the fog data for the final light that is rendering onto the screen. So according to my fog range that I have set over here, this, so according to this, everything gets has a foggy effect. This can also be removed, so this was also one of the requirements. So this has default value, so if I comment this out and I run the program, so as you can see, there is no exception or no warning happening. Now the program is building, and when it runs, so now in the same scene the fog effect has gone, and this is my skybox over here, the night sky, and this is the plane where the eruption has happened, and this is my scene. And as I told you, the pyramid is emitting a green spotlight, so this is the green spotlight. Okay, so even though the user does not provide any fog value, the screen still gets the whole scene gets rendered. Okay, apart from this, then I have the flat plane and everything. So like I told you, the skybox, this is the skybox that is getting displayed on the screen. It has its own render. And apart from the skybox, terrain model. So in this file, I take up the height map data. I map the texture to the pixels. Then I set up the vertices of the triangles that are rendering the terrain. Then I set normals for each of them, and I set the windings for the triangles, and finally I pass everything on to the word matrix, and this renders the terrain. And also I'm using shader texture light as I showed you. Sorry, which is using the texture light where I showed you the fog data. So all the calculations are happening in this shader texture light class file. Fog data is getting passed on to the buffer. Apart from that, then I have pre-made models, the box that was getting displayed on the screen. So I have the models, and I have the UV coordinates set up for this, and the normals set up for this. So the normals are the ones that are responsible for the lightning effect that was happening on them. And I have different models. So this is the unit box repeat texture. So it was the cube that was having all the same textures on one side. Then I have the unit pyramid, the pyramid that was getting displayed on one side, and I have a pyramid with a repeat texture. Okay, this was not getting displayed because it's a single pyramid. I was using this one, the pyramid with a repeat texture. So due to its normal values, it was interacting with the light, and the UV values are set over here. So normals are set over here for each of the vertices, and from the UV values, I am printing the texture on the pyramid. Then I have a unit box which has 6 different faces, 6 different textures on each of the faces. So it was the box with the dice texture on it. So from this code, I am displaying the cube with the different textures and then the sphere. Now the mesh separator files is the one that interacts with my model, which was the spacecraft, and it calculates all the meshes and does all the required actions, sets up the triangles and vertices. So that's pretty much it. This was the requirement for my program. I'll show you the scene once again. So I have 3 point lights, two beneath the spacecrafts and one beneath my egg over here. One more thing to notice is that I'm rotating only, although there are 3 point lights, but I'm rotating only two of these. One is just stationary beneath the side. Then I have fog implemented on my scene. I have terrain. I have a skybox, and I'm using the pre-made models, which are these cubes 1 and 2. So this has the same texture. This is the same texture one, and then this is the different texture cube that I showed you the code of. All of these are interacting with the light, as we can see. See, this gets illuminated right now. Now this gets illuminated right now, and also this model is interacting with the light, so a point light is falling on this, and directional light is happening, which I said earlier. So that is why my scene has a somewhat bright effect. And from my pyramid over here, this one, I have one spotlight, which is the end is here, a green spotlight, also just to showcase that I can, we can put different colors to the light. So I have illuminated the spotlight with a green color. So I'm using all of the lights. So this was everything that we have learned in the past 10 weeks, starting from our pre-made models, going to the terrain, to skybox, and to the models, to the lights. And also, as we can see that if we move away from the scene, we go into the dense fog area and the screen gets darker. This is it for my final project. Thank you so much. I hope you guys enjoy the scene.